Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Chodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajaka Ashtoto the Srimad's Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajaka Acharya Ashtoto the Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajaka Acharya Ashtoto the Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 12th day of January 2026 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are beginning chapter 16, the Divine and Demoniac Natures. on page 615. All right, we'll just chant that first verse. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damash Chayagyascha Svadhyayas Tapa Arjavam. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Yes. Oops. Shri Bhagavan. Go ahead. Go ahead. Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Anyone online?
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir
Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir
Tyaga Shanti Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi
Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha
Dhanam Damascha Yagyascha
Svadhyayastapa Arjavam.
Svadhyayastapa Arjavam. Okay, word by word. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Abhayam, fearlessness, Sattva Sangshuddhir, purification of one's existence, Jnana, in knowledge, Yoga, of linking up, Vyavastitihi, the situation, Dhanam, charity, Damaha, controlling the mind, Cha, and Yagyaha, performance of sacrifice, Cha, and Svadhyaya, study of Vedic literature, Tapaha, austerity, Arjavam, simplicity. Okay, so I'll read the translations for the first three. Hare Krishna. Okay. All right. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, covetousness means greed, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. Purport. In the beginning of the 15th chapter, the banyan tree of this material world was explained. The extra roots coming out of it were compared to the activities of the living entities, some auspicious, some inauspicious. In the 9th chapter, also, the devas, or godly, and the asuras, the ungodly, or demons, were explained. Now, according to Vedic rites, activities in the mode of goodness are considered auspicious for progress on the path of liberation. And such activities are known as Daivi Prakriti, transcendental by nature. Those who are situated in the transcendental nature make progress on the path of liberation. For those who are acting in the modes of passion and ignorance, on the other hand, there is no possibility of liberation. Either they will have to remain in this material world as human beings, or they will descend among the species of animals or even lower life forms. In this 16th chapter, the Lord explains both the transcendental nature and its attendant qualities, and the demoniac nature and its qualities. He also explains the advantages and disadvantages of these qualities. The word abhijatasya, in reference to one born of transcendental qualities or godly tendencies, is very significant. To beget a child in a godly atmosphere is known in the Vedic scriptures as garbhadhana sanskara. If the parents want a child in the godly qualities, they should follow the 10 principles recommended for the social life of the human being. In the Bhagavad Gita, we have studied also before that sex life for begetting a good child is Krishna himself. Sex life is not condemned, provided the process is used in Krishna consciousness. Those who are in Krishna consciousness, at least, should not beget children like cats and dogs, but should beget them so that they may become Krishna conscious after birth. That should be the advantage of children born of a father and mother absorbed in Krishna consciousness. The social institution known as Varnashrama Dharma, the institution dividing society into 4 divisions of spiritual life and 4 occupational divisions, or castes, is not meant to divide human society according to birth. Such divisions are in terms of educational qualifications. They are to keep society in a state of peace and prosperity. The qualities mentioned herein are explained as transcendental qualities meant for making a person progress in spiritual understanding so that he can get liberated from the material world. In the Varnashram institution, the sannyasi, or the person in the renounced order of life, is considered to be the head or the spiritual master of all the social statuses and orders. A Brahmin is considered to be the spiritual master of the 3 other sections of a society, namely the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. But a sannyasi who is on the top of the institution is considered to be the spiritual master of the Brahmins also. For a sannyasi, the first qualification should be fearlessness. Now he's beginning to go systematically through the list. So we're going to go, at the end of this paragraph, we'll review a little bit. For a sannyasi, the first quality should be fearlessness, because a sannyasi has to be alone without any support or guarantee of support. He has simply to depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one thinks, after I leave my connections, who will protect me, he should not accept the renounced order of life. One must be fully convinced that Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his localized aspect as Paramatma, is always within, that he is seeing everything, and he always knows what one intends to do. One must thus have firm conviction that Krishna, as the Paramatma, will take care of a soul surrendered to him. I shall never be alone, one should think. Even if I live in the darkest regions of a forest, I shall be accompanied by Krishna, and he will give me all protection. That conviction is called abhayam, fearlessness. This state of mind is necessary for a person in the renounced order of life. So we'll begin there. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmilatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So just one note on the process of how we learn things. And actually you'll see that we really learn by contrast. That if we just heard about the Brahmins and the sannyasis and so forth, we wouldn't as well understand how the society works and our place in it as if we, unless we learn also about the lower classes and the lower ashrams and what their qualities are, and we'll see how we fit into them and where we want to aspire to be like that. So this chapter is a great example of that. He lists all of these qualities of those endowed with divine nature. So this is the qualities and the modes of goodness and those which further one's spiritual advancement. So these are qualities we need to try to cultivate. And then especially he divides into the qualities as they're listed are especially meant for different members of the varnas and the ashrams. So he starts with the sannyasis and he explains that sannyasis are meant to be the spiritual masters in general of all society, even of the Brahmins. And the sannyas is meant to be ashram in which one accepts the task of helping the society to become Krishna conscious. This idea of austerity, traveling and preaching, and as Prabhupada said, the first quality is as Krishna said, the first quality is fearlessness. Why? Because you really don't know. You're giving up your support, so to speak. You know, the family, society, the job, all these different things, and you're simply relying on Krishna and the traveling. You know, Prabhupada, he perfectly showed. He came to America with nothing. He was just relying on Krishna. You know, he had $7, which he said is 3 hours expenditure. I mean, today it wouldn't even be that. 3 minutes maybe. But of course, inflation is taking a lot of the value out. But the point is that you have to rely on Krishna to support you, protect you, inspire you what to say, what not to say, and what not to do. And one of the ways that you rely on that is that you're trying to follow closely in every respect of your life the orders, the instructions you find in Bhagavad Gita and other books of knowledge. And you know that Krishna is there in your heart at every moment, the super soul. And he's also in the hearts of all the living entities that you see, especially the human beings. So you can see how it came to be. Prabhupada came to America, and he found some sympathetic souls. First, he had some help from Dr. Mishra, no doubt about it. You know, he was, but that wasn't a great environment for him to preach because Dr. Mishra had his own following, and you know he was a little leery of Prabhupada taking his followers because he saw Prabhupada had a little more charisma, a little more spirit. So that wasn't very good, but it was the first step. He had at first he had that little period in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's where he landed. He kind of had some support there, but there was no question of him staying there because there was no real preaching field, and so he wanted to surrender and went to New York. You know, that was really the place, the challenge. So how did it work? Well, you know, the real, as everyone knows who knows the history, the real first place of substantial success was 26 2nd Avenue. So he met some devotees there, you know, some people who were receptive to the message. They liked Srila Prabhupada, they liked the chanting, they were interested in the philosophy, and they became a little purified by chanting and serving, and they took up the japa and they became serious. They took initiation. And you had, especially in terms of the support, how do you get this? Well, you got to have a source of income, right? So Prabhupada he didn't want to just walk around New York all the time when he was first doing it, trying to sell his books, you know, and get a few dollars that way. But he had some real serious supporters, specifically Brahmananda and Satsrup. Now, of course, Bruce and Steve, right? They were both employed by the city, I think in welfare or teaching, something like that. They had regular jobs. So they were living at the center, at the 22nd Avenue, and they were working their job, and they were giving the paycheck to Prabhupada to support the temple and everything like that. So how did that work? Well, they were moved from within. The super soul from within was giving them the inspiration to do that. And they felt, Prabhupada encouraged it, and they felt good doing it. They didn't feel it as, oh boy, handle it. No, they felt that this is their service, and it was invaluable service. So that's how it works. You're relying on Krishna to support you and protect you, because he's in everyone's heart, and he's in your heart. And if one is sincerely serving him, then he'll inspire the person from within. Book distributors know this, that if they're sincere and they're praying to Krishna and they're trying their best to help the person, then the super soul in so many people, they say, yeah, this seems like an interesting person, let me give some Lakshmi for it, some money. So that's how the sannyasi feels at all moments. He's always relying on Krishna at every moment. And that sense of dependence is really central to bhakti, to feel that Krishna is supporting Krishna. I'm serving him, he's with me, he's everywhere, and I'm going to undergo the austerity of not having that false security. I got the job, I got the account, bank account, everything, I'm secure. That's false security, because ultimately that's all Maya, that's all destroyed. But Krishna is never destroyed, and he will protect us even all the way through the point of leaving our body, and then take us back to God if we're sincere. So that's why this fearlessness is so important. And Prabhupada once asked, I saw that there was a book that had this on the cover, on the back cover. They asked, someone asked him, Prabhupada, what is it that you feel when you're chanting Hare Krishna? And Prabhupada said, fearless. He's feeling protected. We know that there's danger at every step, but Krishna will protect, and if it's our time to go to him, then we believe. And even at that point, at time of death, which is so terrifying for people who have no spiritual assets, they're peaceful, and accepting it, and just going on to the next stage. And even amongst devotees, I think I've told you this sometimes, over the years, I've been at quite a few bedsides of devotees, because they often ask me to come and chant, and I relish doing it. And I've seen, by and large, that most of the devotees, they're in a relatively peaceful situation. Usually it's not just me, there's a whole bunch of devotees, whether it's at the hospital or in their home, whatever it may be. And we're all chanting sincerely. And I'll tell you a little story. When I started this class, there was no internet or anything. And so it was 4 nights a week. We used to do Thursday, we had no lounge or anything. And the devotees, one or two would come, but there was one who always came. There was this Mataji named Phyllis was a bhakti name. I forgot her name now. I'm forgetting things. But she was sincere, and she would always come, but I would tell her, I can't just have one lady coming. So she would, drag one of her friends to come, But she had joined late. She was about 50 when she joined. She was very sincere. But she had been through a lot of things, and she was a smoker. She had smoked cigarettes. And she already had COPD, you know what that is. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease from long smoking, It affects your breathing. So over the years, she got initiated, and she was coming regularly to the class, and she was doing other things. But gradually it got worse, And eventually she called me. It was February of 2011. It was the Kadasi, if I recall. And she said, Dravida, I think this is it. I got her to the hospital. I said, what's the matter? I can't breathe, Of course, I was the only. So I called Rajendra Nandan. He was in town. And we both went over there. And by the time we got to the hospital, she was already on the breathing machine, and the doctor was saying, this is it, for her. So he just started chanting And there's like a simple melody, Prabhupada's original melody that's usually chanted at that time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So we're chanting and chanting. And then two other devotees came in. Ladli, you may know. Ladli is Mahabharat's wife for a long time. And she was helping Vrajabadu. Vrajabadu was a legendary devotee here. She joined. I think she was American. She lived in Mexico for some time until she came to San Diego and joined here. And this was like when it, the place opened, which was in about 78, something like that. And she never left. So she was already quite elderly. She was on Social Security. But she was famous for gathering whatever leftover maha was and wheeling it to the beach and feeding it to the seagulls, to the point where they saw her coming and the seagulls in the sky gathered, and came down. She was, so everyone, liked her, obviously. But she, she was already elderly, and she actually passed, I think, in 96. So Ladli, in her senior year, she was taking care of her. And she also came in with Brajabadu to sing to Phyllis. And but after like 15, 20 minutes, Brajabadu had her own medical issue that she couldn't stand it. She came, but she participated. So he was chanting, and then Phyllis had her kids fly in. She had a grown-up daughter and I think 2 sons who lived in different parts of the country, and she had alerted them, and they had flown in. So they came in the hospital room and everything. So after a certain point, they said, well, okay, well, it's time. The doctor said, she's not going to recover, so we're going to. So they didn't say pull the plug, but the equivalent. So I said, oh, well, it would be good if we could keep chanting here, because it said, no, we want this to be a family affair, so you'll have to leave. Okay, what can we do? So we walked down the corridor, a few doors, and we sat in a waiting room there. So we're waiting, and for 15 minutes later, one of the sons comes in, and he says, you better come back in there. She's not leaving. She's not, he's dying, She's she was doing everything she could to try to survive until we came back in. She wanted to hear Hare Krishna. So we walked in there, we started chanting again, and within 5 minutes, she was gone, and she was peacefully leaving. She was very, I don't remember her smiling broadly, but you can see she was peaceful, So, and anyway, there's other stories, and it's always a great experience to see how practically every devotee who I've chanted for, it was a great contrast to what I experienced myself when I worked in the hospital. My last job I had was working as an inhalation therapist, someone who takes the bag around and gives the oxygen. And so numerous times I was there when people died, and it's nothing like that. For the most part, they're sedated. They're not even awake. Because they're too horrified. So I've seen many times, but it's not like with devotees who have practiced and they're getting the mercy of having devotees surrounding them and chanting. So this is one of the benefits that Krishna provides devotees who are sincerely seeing you off and helping you remember Krishna at that critical time. So back to our different. So the first one was fearlessness, and that's described here in this paragraph we read about the sannyasi. And that the... okay, sure.
So how does a devotee decide...
Yeah, please.
How does a devotee decide whether to keep their job and then turn over the paycheck to the temple versus just joining the temple full time? I mean, isn't it always better for the temple?
Well, this is a special time. This is the movement we're just getting going. So Prabhupada wanted him to keep him in the job because he needed some income like that. There was no book distribution. There were no Indians that were visiting and giving donations yet. It was just the initial stages of he was able to find, and I always remarked, because I was part of that whole era, the 60s and revolutionary. There was a lot of anti-war sentiment because the Vietnam War was going on, and the hippie era there was a spiritual element to it because of maybe to a large degree because of the drug, the LSD, the hallucinations. You think you're seeing God, all these things. So that was the environment that Prabhupada, that Krishna brought Prabhupada to. Because when he was uptown, it wasn't there. He spent a good, I don't know, maybe a year? No, not a year, maybe 2/3 of a year. And there was a different crowd, But when he came downtown, these were the real seekers. They didn't know what they were doing. The drugs were not going to help them. Ultimately, those who stayed with the drugs, they didn't help them. But at least when people saw, those who were sincere saw a genuine guru, they were ready to really investigate and take part. So the idea is that there was a special circumstance, and Krishna sent those a few devotees who were had full-time jobs. Some of them didn't stay with their full-time jobs. They quit the jobs and joined. But Prabhupada encouraged Satsvarup, and Rupanuga, I think, also had a full-time job, in Brahmananda. To keep the job, you can stay in the temple, that means sleeping on the floor and everything, austere, and work on your job during the day and give your paycheck, give it to Krishna. And so how can we give it to Krishna? You just give it to me and I'll give it to Krishna. That's Prabhupada. So it was a special circumstance. It's not, and today you also have people doing that, but generally they don't live in the temple. They'll live outside, and have jobs, and they'll come and they'll bring and give donations, a portion of their paycheck, because they have to support the family and everything. So somehow or other, Krishna provided the Lakshmi that Prabhupada could not only sustain that, then we had enough money to print magazines. That was a big thing, BTG. Prabhupada once sent the BTG, Back to Godhead magazine. Did you take your free magazine? Okay, because there's a new one out there. And he said this is the backbone of the movement, because that was the main distribution at first. To go out and distribute big books. There weren't any big books. The first book published, I think maybe it was the Ishopanishad, but then the Bhagavad Gita came out, but it was the softback. It wasn't the unabridged, And the idea of supporting the temple by distributing hundreds of books, and it didn't come up yet. But there were all of these ways in which the Lakshmi came. People joined. They had an inheritance. They were able to give a few $100 or $1,000. So the point is that the way in which the movement sustains itself evolved over time. When Prabhupada went to India, and he found many wealthy Indians who were also Vaishnavas. And when he contacted them, they were eager participants in helping the Bombay temple come up, and that involved, he came up with this idea of a life member, You become a life member, you give 1,000 rupees, which was a lot of money at that time. And you can stay in any temple. We had temples all over the world. Anywhere you go, you can stay for 3 days in any temple, and you get a set of books. The number of books was probably 30 at that time. Now then it became 80. So that was a way, because he found people who recognized Prabhupada as a serious sannyasi. It was a different environment. So wherever he went, there was a way, and especially book distribution, of sustaining the temple. Through devotees going out, relying on Krishna, being sincere, and selling the books. So there are different ways in which, and then we have here in this temple, we had this wealthy, when I came in '89, Dr. Majumdar. He wasn't a disciple in Prabhupada's line. He had been initiated by some Babaji, I think, in Radhakund. But he loved the deities here. I remember he used to stand right over there and he would gaze at the deities doing the artik and everything. He was super wealthy. He was an engineer, came to America. I don't know if he ever married. But he, brilliant engineer, and he invented and developed the guidance systems for the cruise missiles for the Defense Department. Tens of millions of dollars he made with his business. So he would give $10,000 a month, and he was a main donor for the aborted project of building a big temple in Encinitas, Escondido, sorry, that was prominent between 98 and 2008. And those that know the history, 2008 was when the big recession hit, you know. But anyway, when he passed away, maybe a year ago now, the project was aborted, but he gave several $1 million to the temple, and that's going to fund the whole renovation program they're having going here. So anyway, Prabhupada, the thing is, Prabhupada was so courageous and confident that Krishna would protect him, that he got on that boat with no real support, no money, just with the faith and in the order of his spiritual master and the prediction of Lord Chaitanya that his name would be spread all over the world, And for years before Prabhupada took sannyas, he was saying how he was horrified. His guru would come to him in a dream, and then he would say, you have to follow me. And the guru was walking into the ocean, and Prabhupada hesitated to take real sannyas, and then he did take it in '59, I think it was. So he's kind of revealing, in his purports, the institution of the sannyasi, person in the renounced order, is considered to be the head of the spiritual master of all the social statuses and orders of life. And he has to be fearless because he has to rely on Krishna for the maintenance. The first example is the six Goswamis. Rupa, Sanatan, they had been very wealthy. They were right in the government, But when Lord Chaitanya came and saw them, they surrendered immediately. Namo Mahabodhanyaya, Rupa Goswami composed that verse. And he told them to quit the job and go to Vrindavan and write books and excavate, all the places of pastimes that are there. And so they did that. It wasn't easy. Sanatan was arrested. He was the prime minister, and Rupa, I think, was the finance minister. So Rupa, he was able to do it first. But Sanatan was put in jail. Rupa had cashed out. He had a whole boatload of gold. How much that would be worth today? Billions of dollars. You can imagine. And so he left some of it with a very trustworthy grocer. I swear, this is what the word is used. You can imagine how people different trust. In case there was an emergency, and the emergency was that Sanatan was arrested. So that somehow he was able to get that money and bribe the jailer to let him go. So the jailer took 10,000 gold coins or something, and Sanatan left and just walked off. So from super wealthy and influential, the top of society, social. I said, heck with that, Lord Chaitanya inspired them to give everything up. So they're the ideals. All right, let's read on a little more. In the Varnashram, okay, we did that. Then he, this is the sannyasi, has to purify his existence. There are so many rules and regulations to be followed in the renounced order of life. Most important of all, the sannyasi is strictly forbidden to have any intimate relationship with a woman. He is even forbidden to talk with a woman in a secluded place. Lord Chaitanya was an ideal sannyasi, and when he was at Puri, Jagannath Puri, his feminine devotees could not even come near to offer their respects. They were advised to bow down from a distant place. This is not a sign of hatred for women as a class, but it is a stricture imposed on the sannyasi not to have close connections with women. One has to follow the rules and regulations of a particular status of life in order to purify his existence. For a sannyasi, intimate relations with women and possession of wealth for sense gratification are strictly forbidden. The ideal sannyasi was Lord Chaitanya himself, and we can learn from his life that he was very strict in regards to women. Although he is considered to be the most liberal incarnation of Godhead, accepting the most fallen conditioned souls, he strictly followed the rules and regulations of the sannyas order of life in connection with association with women. One of his personal associates, namely Chota Haridas, was associated with Lord Chaitanya along with his other confidential personal associates. But somehow or other, this Chota Haridas looked lustily at a young woman, and Lord Chaitanya was so strict that he at once rejected him from the society of his personal associates. Lord Chaitanya said, for a sannyasi or anyone who is aspiring to get out of the clutches of material nature and trying to elevate himself to the spiritual nature and go back home, back to Godhead, for him, looking toward material possessions and women for sense gratification, not even enjoying them, but just looking toward them with such a propensity, is so condemned that he had better commit suicide before experiencing such illicit desires. Close quote. So these are the processes for purification. The next item is Jnana Yoga Vivastiti, being engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. Sannyasi life is meant for distributing knowledge to the householders and others who have forgotten their real life of spiritual advancement. A sannyasi is supposed to beg from door to door for his livelihood, but this does not mean that he is a beggar. Humility is also one of the qualifications of a transcendentally situated person, and that of sheer humility, the sannyasi goes from door to door, not exactly for the purpose of begging, but to see the householders and awaken them to Krishna consciousness. This is the duty of a sannyasi. If he is actually advanced and so ordered by his spiritual master, he should preach Krishna consciousness with logic and understanding. And if one is not so advanced, he should not accept the renounced order of life. But even if one has accepted the renounced order of life without sufficient knowledge, he should engage himself fully in hearing from a bona fide spiritual master to cultivate knowledge. A sannyasi or one in the renounced order of life must be situated in fearlessness, sattva shuddhi, purity, and jnana yoga, knowledge. I remembered the name of that lady. Padmavati was her initiated name. This finally came to me. So all of that was about the sannyasi, who's, remember, the spiritual master of all the other orders and ashrams. The next item is charity. Charity is meant for the householders. The householders should earn a livelihood by an honorable means, and spend 50% of their income to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. Thus, a householder should give in charity to institutional societies that are engaged in that way. Charity should be given to the right receiver. There are different kinds of charity, as will be explained later on. Charity in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Charity in the mode of goodness is recommended by the scriptures, but charity in the modes of passion and ignorance is not recommended because it is simply a waste of money. Charity should be given only to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. That is charity in the mode of goodness. Then as far as Dhamma, or self-control, is concerned, it is not only meant for other orders of religious society, but is especially meant for the householder. Although he has a wife, a householder should not use his senses for sex life unnecessarily. There are restrictions for the householders even in sex life, which should only be engaged in, which should be engaged in only for the propagation of children. If he does not require children, he should not enjoy sex life with his wife. Modern society enjoys sex life with contraceptive methods, or more abominable methods to avoid the responsibility of children. Of course, that's abortion. That's more abominable. Doesn't mention it. This is not in the transcendental quality, but is demoniac. If anyone, even if he is a householder, wants to make progress in spiritual life, he must control his sex life and should not beget a child without the purpose of serving Krishna. If he is able to beget children who will be in Krishna consciousness, one can produce hundreds of children. But without this capacity, one should not indulge only for sense pleasure. Okay. 1 second. This thing is running out of battery. So this is this charity and Dhamma, self-control, especially meant for the householders, because they have all opportunity for deviating. So the money can be used to enjoy one's senses, and of course the wife can also be used for sense gratification. So this charity and self-control are of course they're also meant for the or the self-control is also there for the sannyasis, all the orders, but especially it's ordained for the Krishna conscious householders, And, you know, Prabhupada, he taught the householders how to lead a Krishna conscious life. He himself, you know, was married for quite a while as an initiated devotee. And he tried to give his children and wife as much Krishna consciousness as possible. And the best example, you know, in our line, at least most prominent, was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I mean, he had a very responsible job as a magistrate, you know, and he had, his first wife died, he had children by her, then he had more, another wife had more children, he had, I think, 10 or 11 children. And all of them he trained in Krishna consciousness as far as possible, and most prominently Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Lalit Prasad was also another very important, you know, devotee who very serious. And so, and he himself was the pioneer of modern Krishna consciousness. He really saved it. You can, you know, you can easily understand how Lord Chaitanya's line became corrupted because of not anything that Lord Chaitanya did or the sincere followers, but because the highest, most worshipable relationship with Krishna is that of the gopis, you know, even the unmarried gopis, the Bharakiya Ras. Then the Sahajiya sect, there were 12 different, you know, bogus sects that developed, and all of them deviated from the strict principles that Lord Chaitanya taught, and they tried to imitate Krishna, you know, with the relation with the gopis and everything was, and so Lord Chaitanya himself, you know, as Prabhupada mentions, was a very, very strict sannyasi, but some of his so-called followers were not. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and so when Bhaktivinoda Thakur came on the scene, the Gaudiya Vaishnavism had a very kind of bad name, because so many who claimed to be followers of Lord Chaitanya were in this mood of using it as an excuse for illicit relation with women. Because, you know, externally it looks like Lord Krishna, oh, he's dancing with the gopis in the middle of the night. They're not, you know, that his girlfriends, they're wives of others, you know. So you can see on the surface it looks like an excuse for lasciviousness, but it's really not, you know. And you know, you have to understand from reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita and also seeing the examples of the lives of the great devotees, that they're very strict, you know, sannyasis. They were not having any kind of illicit relation, but some of them were meditating on meditating on Lord Krishna's pastimes with the gopis and so forth, and seeing it and understanding it in its true sense as the most purest type of love, selfless love, and completely pure of any of the, you know, illicit sex desire that is there. So it's a challenge, but Prabhupada set up these ashrams and the whole rules and regulations and so forth. And if one practices nicely, then he can follow the principles. Okay, yeah. So we're getting a little late. Yeah, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. How many devotees did Lord Chaitanya give sannyas initiation to? Do you know?
Well, beyond the six Goswamis, they were the first. You know, I couldn't give you a number. There were others who were followers. I always thought Chota Haridas was a sannyasi, because Prabhupada mentions, if you read in the book, as a renounced order of life, but it turns out he wasn't. He was a brahmachari, you know. But even that, he was with Lord Chaitanya, wearing orange. He was one of his intimate. And he went to beg some rice, and there was not the person he begged from, but someone else, some young woman was there, and somehow he looked at her, you know, the wrong way. That you shouldn't. and when Lord Chaitanya took the rice, you know, when he had the rice later on for lunch, you know, he said, "Where did this nice rice come from?" And Chota Haridas got it. Oh, how did it? You know, he knew what had happened, so he banned him from his association. And Chota Haridas, you know, and some of the devotees begged him, no, if you keep asking me, I'm going to leave here, you know. So what happened is he committed suicide. And I think he committed suicide by going to the Ganges, to the confluence, the Triveni. and diving in there. And there's a tragic story about that. On the morning walk, after the Chaitanya Charya had come out, devotees were with Prabhupada walking. In the morning walk was offered sannyasis. And this whole story came up about Choda Haridas. And Prabhupada said, yes, this is the punishment, if the sannyasi deviates like that, And so some of the sannyasis, oh my God, Prabhupada, then you won't have any sannyasis left because we have so many young women in the movement, and sannyasis are dealing. And said, well, he says, I'm not so strict, So of course, it's not appropriate. But by that time, one of the most prominent sannyasis, Vishnu Jan Swami, he was famous for his kirtans. He was on the walk and he heard that and he dropped back because I asked Vyasaki, who wrote a book about it, and he said, no, he didn't actually fall down, but apparently he had a son, he had a wife and son when he joined, he took sannyas and he couldn't see either of them. But apparently he had visited them because his wife was saying your son really wants to see you and everything like that. So he maybe saw them, and that's verboten. You're not allowed to see your wife because all those thoughts will come up, the remembrances, these things. So he did that, and then when he was on the walk, he heard Prabhupada. He dropped back. He went to meet Triveni, and he went into the water. He actually committed suicide. Prabhupada, he said, oh, he could have done so much more service because he missed that last part of where Prabhupada said, no, it's not. It's not for us. I'm not so strict. He missed that part. All he always with the heard part. Yes, that's the punishment. So it was a tragic thing. Anyway, it's getting a little late, so we'll stop here. We're going to pick up this purport tomorrow. It may take us 3 days to get through it. It's pretty long. But I think we're as far as, 619. Then as far as Dhamma, self-control, is concerned, isn't that how far we got? Huh?
The next item is charity.
No. You got down to sacrifice or...
Yeah, we got...
You're on the bottom of 6.8.
Sacrifice.
Oh, sacrifice. Sacrifice is another item. Yeah, okay, middle of chapter 6, page 619. All right, one quick poem. Let's see. Okay, this is one you haven't heard in a while. The Chataka subsists on rain it catches in midair. And so it's always praying to the cloud to send its fare. Yet though that cloud may send a thunderbolt instead of rain, that bird continues praying fervently despite the pain. Just like the Chataka, I fix my mind upon one goal, and that is you, O Lord, most kind to every fallen soul. So whether it is punishment you give or mercy sweet, I'll always pray to you for service to your lotus feet. Hare Krishna. Okay, all glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Bol.